Welcome back to the Chainsaw Man Comparison Series, now on episode 10, which covers chapters 29, 30, and 31. After the events of the last two episodes, everyone left behind quite the tale of destruction and death, as well as a news report that we actually get to hear out loud this time, as well as some aerial footage of the building Aki destroyed that we now know was called the Nirima Nishidai building. Seems like they're willing to admit that public safety has devil hunters that are in fact devils themselves, something I guess Power didn't like because we could hear her turning off the TV. This is also around the time that Aki woke up, and as he can see, he's got some visitors that are enjoying the latest edition of Koro Koro. Or is it Koso Koso? Well anyways, Power didn't care much about that shonen ripoff for long because like most Shinigamis, she's got a sweet tooth to attend to. I think I'd be pretty annoyed if this was the first thing I woke up to, but after what Aki went through, the only thing he really cares about is who else was able to make it out alive. I love the direction the team put forth for the moments in between panels. It creates a very cohesive final picture and leaves less up to the imagination, even if Tatsuki Fujimoto already paced this particular part with extreme care due to the extreme fragility of Aki's mental state. We all know that this episode is less of an action-packed one and more of a recuperative one, so it's actually a little surprising that action director Tatsuya Yoshihara took the reins this time around. But then again, we also already knew he was perfectly capable moving from the Leech Devil fight to Aki's morning routine in episode 4. And on top of that, he has 6 chief animation directors to back him up this time. That's the most I've ever seen in a Chainsaw Man episode to date. One of them being Yosuke Yajima, who supervised this hospital scene and by extension key animator Benjamin Foir's 1.5 minute long sequence of Aki's slip into sadness. Altogether, I'd say Aki's distress shows a lot better this time around, and that's even before he finds out that he only has 2 years left to live. I love how this moment was done because it almost hints that Aki is just as cursed as the ones he's been cursing. Even his final source of solace for calming down his nerves now acts as a reminder for his lost friend. The harsh reality of loss hits you in waves, and it's little reminders like that that really bring out the waterworks. I love how Benjamin did this cut. It really emphasizes how Aki just couldn't keep up with his emotions. It was at this moment that he fully realized that Himeno isn't coming back, and that's a feeling I think many people can understand on some level. Even Denji, although he's not exactly processing it in the same way. He doesn't seem too bothered by the whole thing, but then again, he also didn't know Himeno for that long. Considering that, it's actually commendable that he's even considering his lack of empathy to begin with. And even if he did know all these people for longer than he has, some people just get over things faster than others. Like many other dogs out there, Denji's still got a good heart. It's just a very carefree one, so chances are he won't be brooding over this for a while, if ever again. Devil hunters and sympathy don't really seem to mix well anyways, and the two that just entered Aki's room are good enough examples of that. Everyone's got no problem taking this man's apples away from him. Shout out to the person who actually left him the apples to begin with. It's crazy that even as we draw closer to the end of chapter 29, only now does the opening start to play. Once that's over though, we can continue covering the remainder of this chapter where Makima is escorting Denji and Power to the instructor from hell that'll be whipping them into shape. Someone who Makima didn't even get the chance to introduce before he gives them their first test. Well, it's more of an evaluation to check their lack of empathy. Not a difficult test for them to pass, and one that this mystery instructor was very pleased with, much to the discomfort of Power. But that's far from the discomfort she or Denji will feel, because after Makima leaves, they're both about to get the hug of their lifetime. Little did they realize that this guy's love for killing devils extends to both of them as well. This is the site that completes chapter 29, so after we watch the two of them squirm around a bit more in the anime, now we can move on to chapter 30 where the two paralyzed devils fall to the ground. This back-breaking maneuver really did a number on them, but luckily, like all other devils, all it takes is a little bit of blood and they're right as rain again. Seems like this guy came prepared for the torture he was gonna dish out today. Well, either way, they don't seem to be too thankful for the gift since they had to die to receive it. But this is something they're gonna have to get used to when working with this dead-eyed man, who we'll later find out is called Kishibe. This guy is eccentric for sure, but if it's one thing I've realized in this show, it's that these types are the most formidable opponents. I said earlier that this episode doesn't have much action, and that's largely because the devil duo here doesn't really stand a chance against their new instructor. Nonetheless, there's some really awesome Sakuga to break down here. It's got some incredibly engaging camera work, and it's topped off with very satisfying satisfying smear frames. I would expect nothing less from Tatsuya Yoshihara. Seriously, those smear frames are to die for. As usual, everything's got such a cinematic vibe attached to it, and I really love how in the split second when Kishibe makes his first move, the BGM has a low pass filter put on it to show how time stands still for the bamboozled Denji. This guy is ruthless with his knife skills, and the animator to display these skills is none other than Kaito Tomioka, who at the very least did the layout for these cuts, from Power's approach to when she gets stopped in her tracks. Pretty short but awesome background animation, and animator 10+10 follows it up with Power suffering from the effects of Kishibe's quick work. A battle at the gravesite is pretty fitting considering how these two will consistently meet their end throughout the rest of the day. But while they navigate their way through that hellscape, Aki has his own much more mortal training to contend with the help of Tendo and Kendo. These two are an interesting pair who not only put Denji's manga away for him this time, but are also willing to help Aki find another devil companion. By all accounts, they agree that this would be a great time for him to quit, or maybe at least move to the private sector, but based on the animosity we can hear in his voice, it's clear that this whole experience hasn't affected Aki's motivation in the slightest. And based on how Tendo looked at Kendo at that moment, it's clear that an interesting dynamic is starting to form between him and Aki. But we'll put a pin on that for now, because Aki now has to meet with his 5th visitor of the day. One that we'll find out a little later is related to Himeno and has some very interesting material for him to look over. But again, let's not get too ahead of ourselves. Instead, let's move back over to Denji and Power, who have just gone through the first day of their death trials. Seems like off-screen Denji got hit in the head one too many times, or 20 too many times according to Power, leading to some disconcerting moaning coming from him that's much more aggressive in the anime, as is Power's attempt to deal with it. I'm actually pretty proud of Power for keeping such a close eye on her immortal friend here. In times like this, devil compatriots really need to stick together. I think they're both in agreement that at the rate their new instructor is going at, there's nothing but a dark road ahead of them, and you can really feel the resentment coming from Denji at this moment. It's character acting like this that we never deserved, but animator Lighton gave it to us anyways. I love how smoothly casual all this guy's work comes out, while still retaining certain character traits and mannerisms in accordance with the pose work from the manga. This guy is a crazy talented animator, and I can't wait to talk more about his work on Ending 10. Oh, and speaking of which, the order of my coverage of the endings will be dictated by you guys. I've started a poll within my community that'll take place in rounds to properly rate all the endings from 1 to 12, so I implore you to vote while you still can. But back to the episode, some extra footage of Denji and Power walking off into the night will be what puts an end to chapter 30. So now let's move on to chapter 31, where Kishibe is on his way to continue the punishment from yesterday. There's one revised line here. Instead of expressing his disgruntlement that they ditched his training, he now wonders where they lived to begin with. A good change considering he already told them that he would stop by their place tomorrow. Maybe this means he was less inebriated this time. Good news for Power and Denji, who have obviously gotten a lot smarter since the last time they met. Power was so smart that she didn't just charge the door like she did in the manga, she threw her entire blood spear at it as to not get too close to this badass matrix dodging unit. There's actually a lot to talk about in this ambush. Putting aside the entrancing blood materialization effects, the background comp of her wielding this weapon varies a lot from cut to cut. The first one is a more standard background render, but once she throws the thing, we switch over to background animation for an extra dynamic high FOV shot. This really helps emphasize just how close this thing was to taking Kishibe out, but it seems like only the peephole got the most damage here. Sucks for Power, because I don't know if she was expecting it or not, but in the anime at least, it looks like she's a little unsteady on her feet when readying her next attack, considering how much blood it takes. This is an all or nothing ambush, and even that seems to be no match for this guy's Rock Lee inspired drunken fist. We get to see him take down a lot more of these blood spears in the anime, and in true cinematic fashion too, with how we speed up and slow down throughout the hefty and rigorous motion this guy brings to the table. I don't know how strong solidified blood spears would be, but even with the way animator Shamalama made them weightily clunk to the ground, it's still child's play for Kishibe. So it's time to activate the third and final phase of the plan, which was lovingly laid out by Benjamin Farr once again. Now this one is extra special because for the scene of Kishibe initiating his retaliatory kick, Benjamin referenced footage of himself doing the exact same thing. Apparently this animator has some real-world martial arts experience he can draw from. But even when interpreting this footage, he noted that he was amazed at just how much the coat sticks to the body during this motion. So he added a little extra flair to this scene by having the coat fly off Kishibe like an air cannon. And similar to how this kick was shown 3 separate times in the anime, he filmed his his own kick from multiple angles at home. Really cool stuff. His take on the sequence of events was just unique enough to set it apart from the original material, and its impact was felt just as swiftly, if not more so. While not exactly spelled out for us, I think it's pretty obvious that Denji got his neck broke here, and his fake glasses did very little to stop that from happening. And it definitely wasn't enough to stop Power from getting anemic, as Kishibe explains their flaws while drinking some booze this time. Lucky for her and Denji though, he just ran out of that booze, so he's off to the bar to continue drinking his life away. Well, at least that's what he'd like them to think. Seems like someone's gotten better at staying lucid after all the head trauma he endured yesterday. Something he'll likely have to deal with for the rest of today as well, but instead of following that, now we'll get back to Aki, who's on his way to get another devil contract. Handpicked straight from the devil repository that looks like it could belong in the world of cyberpunk. The color scheme, shading, and compositing does this scene an insane amount of justice. But of course, the same could be said with any setting in this show, the hospital being another one. Aki got some heavy-hitting information before he got discharged, and it's information that more or less lines up from that of the manga. See, there technically is a lot of new characters that fill in the gaps here, and even a new shot at the beginning showing almost the entirety of one of the pages, but as far as I can tell, there's no new groundbreaking material here, and we still don't really get to see Himeno's sister's face. One thing we do get to see after Aki swag walks his way to his next devil contract is that it resides in room 108. But that's all the extra stuff we get in this episode, because unlike the way the end of this chapter goes, we don't really get to see the complete picture of what this devil looks like. And there's literally only one page of this chapter left, but that'll have to wait until next time. If you all like this video, then make sure to give it a like and share it with a friend. And hey, also get subscribed for more Chainsaw Man content like this. For those of you who don't know, I've been publishing the uncensored version of these videos up on Patreon, so give that a look if you're interested. But even if you don't, I still wish every one of you a fantastic day. And once again, this is Registry, signing off. Happy holidays, everyone.